Everyone, and welcome to the Winnetka Village Council's rescheduled regular meeting on Thursday, April 4th. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask that everybody either turn off or mute your cell phones. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Trustee Myers will lead us in that.
Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, item 3, Rob, would you like to check quorum, please?
Yes. Next meeting is April 9th study session. Everybody okay for that meeting?
What's on board for that?
That is a reviewing 60% design for the streetscape plan.
Gotcha.
Okay. April 16th regular meeting.
Barring a snowstorm, I should be fine. I'm leaving Indy by 3 o'clock.
Okay. That's about right.
That should be okay.
That'll get you about right. Okay. And then we're also looking at a special study session on April 25th. Be looking at refuse program. That's a Thursday. I think I polled all of you for your availability there, and also looking at a special meeting April 30th as well. And I think you've all cleared your calendars for that. And then the first meeting in May 7th.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
By the way, I will not be in attendance on the 16th, and Andy will be taking that meeting for me. Great.
Thank you.
I guess I'm done. Yeah. Maybe we'll have a video. Maybe we'll have a movie. Can we have a movie?
I'll have to watch the films on that one. It'll be a fun time. All right, item number 4, public comment. This is the time of the evening where anyone from the community can come up to the microphone and share your thoughts on any item that is not on the agenda. Would anybody like to address council? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Jessie Butler. I live at 960 Old Green Bay Road. We are right across the tracks from Hubbard Woods Park and the businesses there. And we've lived in Winnetka 27 years. We lived here for 10 years. We're away for 10 years. Came to our senses, came back. We've been here for 17 years since. We have a history of being in Hubbard Woods. We've only been here a year, but my husband grew up in Hubbard Woods, was at the ice rink there. My kids were in the ice rink, and if I could digress just a touch, his life of crime was brought to an abrupt halt as he was growing up when Lucille at Mage's, the drugstore, nabbed him stealing candy, and didn't say a word to him because she knew him. She called his mom, and by the time he got home, she said, "What are you doing stealing candy? You're going back, taking it back to college."
You do know this is not a video that is like for perpetuity.
Anyway, I just had to throw that in because we go back a long time with Hubbard Woods. Anyway, I've learned about the proposal for the business at 915 Green Bay Road, and I know you'll be discussing it at the next meeting, but I just wanted to throw out a couple things now. I've done some research. I've read minutes, watched videos of the past meetings to find out more, and I've even read portions of the Winnetka downtown plan. I'm still trying to understand what an overlay district really is. Bless you all for working on that. But more importantly, after I'm reading it, I'm a little bit confused as to why this proposed business is not considered special use for the district and everything that entails in the approval process. Personally, I love the idea of a retail store with prepared foods and a cafe, which I guess is now the new proposal or will be, whatever. But we and our neighbors are concerned with the banquet reception venue part of it. On weekends, that could go into midnight, could include music. Hubbard Woods is a business district, but just half a block off of it, all around it, there's residential. Our houses, then there are also a whole lot of apartments up and down. At this business, there are apartments both north and south of it that will be sharing a wall. There are many apartments directly across the street. That little enclave has, I think, 24 apartments. Other residential apartments up and down, and across the tracks, there are several houses like ours. A couple issues that come to mind. Music until midnight, and I know you discussed at the last meeting maybe how to remedy that. I don't know if that really would work. Even if it does, let me tell you something. I went over to Mary at the front desk at the community house and asked her how they handled music over there. She said, when it's outside, we get complaints, but that doesn't have anything to do with this. She said, when it's inside, we still get some complaints, but their big complaints are not about the music. They're about the rowdiness of party goers after an event. So consider if this venue had 150 people in it, at midnight in front of 915 Green Bay Road immediately after an event and probably after a good time. Another issue is those of us across the tracks are also concerned about the loading area being directly, we can hear loading in the morning, which we don't mind, but from what I understand, the owner said there will be deliveries or pickups, I guess, then, between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning. And valet parking, I know that was an issue you all discussed. I know, I think, Chris, you said it's a ghost town in Hubbard Woods sometimes. Well, in the summer, it's not. And I really have some concerns about parking, kids on bikes, parents on bikes, loading and unloading, valet parkers possibly running up and down the street. I just think it needs to be looked at. I'm sure there are a lot more issues would come up at the various Winnetka boards and commissions could review the plan. But finally, what I want to say is I think this proposal is a very big deal. Not that I'm completely opposed to everything in it, but I feel that a late night reception wedding venue component would really kind of completely change evenings in Hubbard Woods. Basically, I hope you will consider designating this proposal as special use, which would therefore go to more people to evaluate it. And with all that entails, after that, might consider approving at least part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council? Pat?
Patricia Balsamo. I'm representing the League of Women Voters in this particular discussion. Our board last Monday understood that you are going to be studying recycling, and we would like to garbage pickup. What's the refined word for that?
Refuse.
Thank you. And we would like it very much if you would add to your list composting. Apparently Northfield has quite a composting act going on with waste management. Now, I know we don't use waste management right now, but I'm sure our supplier or remover would be interested in talking to us about the matter. Recycling is great, but composting decreases the landfill, and it adds to the beauty of one's own garden, and it is a topic that, since we're interested in sustainability, it's a great concern of ours today. We think that it would add to the sustainability of the village, and the League has a position on keeping this village vibrant and sustainable. So there we are. Please look at composting and give us a report on what we might do. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Would anyone else like to address council this evening? Seeing none. I see some new faces in the back of the room there. Can you guys tell us what you're here for? Yeah, you guys. Oh, great. Well, welcome. We'll try to keep you awake through the evening. All right, reports. Trustees, we'll start down with John. John, any report?
No report.
Andy?
The flu has left my house.
Yay. That's a good enough report. Ann?
No report.
Bob?
No report.
Scott?
No report.
Penny? No report. Village attorney? No report. Village manager?
No report this evening.
Village president? I have no report except to, no, I have no report. I want to stay out of trouble tonight. All right, approval of the agenda. Before I read the canned script, one of the items that we have, the item that we have under new business involves a resident applicant and several residents who would like to have the opportunity to discuss this. And it seems to me, given the potential for lengthy and maybe passionate discussion on the items on the old business, that we could possibly move the 1309 trap lane variation for policy direction up to the front of the agenda so they haven't got to sit here all evening. Does anybody have a problem with that? Do I have to do something official? Okay, no objections, then we'll move ahead with that. Does any trustee wish to move any item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda. The village clerk will read the items on the consent agenda.
Approval of village council meeting minutes from March 12, 2019 study session and March 19, 2019 regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated March 5th through the 28th, 2019 in the amount of $911,254.72. Resolution number R30, 2019 Sidewalk and Curb Replacement Program Contract Award. Resolution number R33, 2019 approving a professional services agreement with Strand Associates for a specification of switchgear and breakers at the Northfield Substation. Resolution number R34, 2019 approving a Class A1 liquor license for FMM Incorporated doing business as George Troy Boyer Adoption. Resolution number R35, 2019 approving 2019 through 2022 agreement between the Village of Winnetka and the International Association of Firefighters for adoption, and that does it.
Great. Thank you, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call vote.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Wedner?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to item number 10, new business, 1309 Trap Lane variation, and this is for policy direction. The owners of the subject property have requested a zoning variation to allow an in-ground pool in their backyard. The Zoning Board of Appeals considered the request and did not reach consensus on a recommendation. The council has final purview of the case, and here to review this is Community Development Director David Schoen. David?
Yes, good evening. The property is located on Trap. It's zoned R2. It is fronted by two streets, Trap Lane and Holly Lane, thus making it a through lot. And by our zoning ordinance, meaning it has two front yards, and a swimming pool is not allowed in a required front yard. In this district, there is a minimum front yard setback of 50 feet. In addition to that, there is an average minimum setback, which is based on the setback of three other lots along the frontage. So in this instance, it would be one to the west and then two to the east along Holly Lane. And so then the average of that then becomes the minimum setback. Here is an aerial of the neighborhood. You can hopefully see this applicant is joining a number of their neighbors who also have pools in their backyard. So by code, it's their front yard, it's their backyard for them. Here is a site plan of the house and the proposed swimming pool. The red line shows the standard minimum setback of 50 feet. They're proposing 51.33 feet in terms of a setback. So it meets that minimum, but it does not meet that average setback, which is the green line there, which is 88, can't read that up there, 88.59 feet. In addition, there is a mature honey locust tree, 28 inches in diameter. So we put this image together to try to clearly outline what the setbacks are, where the pool is located in relationship to the tree. Also subsequent to the meeting and we had the village forester, who had reviewed this beforehand, provide us some notes, and those were included in the staff report. And as his opinion is that the tree has a good chance of long-term survival. He called it, I believe, a middle-aged tree. And that with the proposed pool location, that it would have a chance of surviving as long as certain things were met in terms of keeping the pool 15 feet west of the tree and minimizing any overdig, and that there be certain post-construction care of the tree, which he identifies those items in the staff report. So what the applicant requires, a front yard setback, to reduce it from the minimum average requirement of 88.59 feet to 51.33 feet along Holly Lane. As was noted, the ZBA failed to recommend approval by a split vote, 2-2. Those who expressed support thought that they maintained the minimum 50-foot setback, and that the average seemed to be working against them in terms of trying to locate a pool in their rear yard, and that also the applicant was making efforts to preserve the mature tree. Those who were in opposition thought there may be an opportunity to reduce the size of the pool in order to reduce the extent of the relief. And they also thought maybe reorienting the pool in an east-west direction, whether or not it saved the tree, was an option. Given that the ZBA did not forward a favorable recommendation, tonight requires a favorable, or when you go to vote on it in the future, it would require a favorable vote of 4 trustees to approve the variation. So tonight we're looking for a policy direction from the council in terms of how to proceed with this request. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Would the applicant like to address council by any chance, or? Come on up.
Mark Gent, I live at 1309 Trap Lane, and my wife apologizes she couldn't be here. We have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old, so my phone is probably full of text messages right now, actually. And I appreciate moving us forward in the agenda. That's very helpful, actually. So thank you again for the opportunity to talk about our case or our variation request. When this whole process started out, so we bought the property and then built the house in 2012, moved in 2013, and then recently did an addition. And through all of those, our understanding of the setback was that it was 50 feet, and that's why you see the pool design is at 51 and change feet, because that's what we were working off. If it wasn't until we started coming to the village before signing the contract with our designers and builders for it, that we learned about the through lot and the larger setback. And it caught us kind of off guard, because it's a fairly sizable lot. I mean, even within Winnetka, which has decent sized properties, it's a good sized lot. And with that, when you calculate all the different setbacks, it's like 75% of the lot's covered by setback, which makes it hard to do almost anything outside of the main structure of the house.
So, and I know that, I personally, I read the minutes from the zoning board, and I've heard from other people too. What would be, and I'm just curious, turning it the other way, what was the challenge in making it go left and right?
There's almost no way to do it east-west without killing the tree. The only way we'd be able to do that is do it east-west and have it be like 18 feet long, the pool, which is basically a big hot tub at that point, right? So almost any way we do it east-west, and we've laid out a couple different variations of that once we learned about the setback challenge. But there's no way to do that and have the tree survive. There's a chance if you make the pool short enough, the tree may survive. But even that, you start to get well within, what Jim Steer talked about, the 15 feet from the trunk of the tree. And even that's a, relatively short pool. If you go to a more normal, like a 20 by 40 pool layout, that tree's not going to survive that.
Right. You guys have any questions for the applicant? Well, we might as well do it now, right?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Jen, I read the notes from the zoning meeting, but can you kind of go through there was a lot of conversation about shortening the length of the pool, and you talked about how you really are looking for a very shallow end. Can it go through kind of the design? Why can't you have a very shallow end, but then still have a shorter pool?
And I've learned more about pool engineering.
A side business in the
Yeah.
future, huh?
So there's some standard conditions for the, floor of the pool, if you will. There's some boundaries around the slope of the kind of shallow end, and then there's boundaries for the length of the deep end. So
When you say these are custom building rules, or these are safety rules, or?
what I read was in like the, International Pool Builders Association guidelines or something. So to be fair, I don't know if that's like a hard and fast rule or if that's what pool builders tend to go by. But, they tend to have certain slopes that they stick to. Our challenge is our kids are young. A standard pool shallow end is 3.5 feet. Well, that's taller than my daughter. And so our goal was to try to get the shallow end. I think we have it at 2.5 feet in the design. So, tomorrow, if they walked into that pool, they could hang out in the shallow end and be perfectly fine. My 6-year-old obviously is a little bit taller. He'd be able to go a little bit deeper. But at the same time, we don't want to build a pool that only works for them when they're 2 years old and 4 years old. So we wanted the deep end to still be, it's a 7 or 8 foot deep, which is a standard kind of diving pool, have that depth. So as they get older, or if down the road we were to move from the house and another family were to move in, it's safe for those kids as they are jumping in, as I did. I grew up in Florida, so we jumped in a lot of pools. And so when you start doing those things, because of these fixed slopes, so to have it shallower on the shallow end, that adds length. To have it deeper in the deep end, that adds length. So we could shorten it to a 20 by 40, a more standard pool. We start to lose either one of those depths, more than likely. My interpretation of the zoning board meeting, and maybe I misinterpreted this, and that's my fault if I did, was they wanted us to try to shorten it to where it didn't require a variance, which we just don't have the space
I was
to
going
do.
to say, yeah, to get to that level is,
So we could look at ways to try to trim 5 feet or 10 feet off the length of the pool and have, a 20 by 40, which is what our neighbors, I'm pointing over here, our neighbors to the east have. We start to lose some of those benefits on the profile of the pool.
okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
And you may not know, but David might. Your neighbor's pool, where would that be in line with where you propose to have your pool?
It depends on which end of the pool you look at. So they're,
The one closest to Holly.
their setback from Holly, I think it's 45 feet. And it's 6 feet further north than ours is. So 6 feet closer to Holly Lane than ours is. But because ours is longer, ours just starts
Right.
further
So
south.
then my question to David would be, how does the other house have that? Was there a conditional use or anything, or a variance for that?
I think it's grandfathered in.
Say again?
The age of the pool and when it was constructed didn't need the variation.
Ah.
And David, in the calculation for the average setback for the 3 houses, I assume that's from the house, not from the pool, not from the end of the pool? Right, yeah.
Yeah, the pool counts as a structure against the variance, but
Yeah,
not for
sometimes.
the variance.
Okay.
And you also would not count the corner side yard of the corner house for that average? 2 lots to the east. You did use that one also? Okay.
So the one on the corner of Hibbard and
812.
Holly? Oh. That side yard setback was counted
Really small.
to calculate? Okay.
And I also in the notes I was reading, it seemed there was like one neighbor that did come to the zoning board and was more concerned probably about stormwater than the location of the pool. So I'm assuming that's going to go through the whole permit process, proper engineering, so there's no stormwater problems with the neighbor next door because of the pool.
And my understanding is that that portion of it's already been signed off on our permit application.
Yeah, I personally don't see a problem with this.
Well, we gotta let the
Yep.
public
Okay.
speak yet before we start making up our
Right.
minds, so. Penny or Bob, do you have any questions?
I do actually. So I'm looking at this picture, David. Can I talk to David here?
Sure.
All right. what's the length of the pool deck there to the north? Is that 14 feet? Am I reading that right? So you're measuring from the end of the pool, so the deck is not part of this calculation? Correct. All right, and that deck is 14 feet? So, so the whole pool structure is 37 feet from Holly, including the deck? Okay, so if by chance you were able to move the pool to 40 feet, you're moving closer to at least that 50-foot setback.
Oh, that deck on the north end, we'll scrap right now. I mean, that's not a huge concern for us, the deck part of it, just because that's not part of the variance calculation, but if that's the concern, we'll lose that north section of the deck, no problem. That was just to put a couple lounge chairs out there at the back end of the pool.
Yeah, setback requirement.
Okay.
I don't need more sun, yeah.
So if you didn't have that deck, now you're within the normal setback of 50 feet.
No.
No.
The deck doesn't count for it.
Green
No,
line.
no, I understand. Right, but the minimum, the red line there is 50 feet off of Holly. You get rid of the deck, you're within that 50, you're beyond that 50-foot.
Yeah, but even the red line minimum, I think the deck doesn't count against that.
No, I understand.
But again, if optically, yeah, we could lose the north, that north section of that deck. I mean, the pool's gonna have the coping around it. I don't know, what's
Yeah.
required for the distance from the coping, but, we could go to the minimum of the required on the north end there, no problem.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any? Andy?
Yeah,
Ann?
18 feet.
Okay. Well, thank you. Now we'll open up the microphone to folks from the audience. Would anybody from the audience like to speak on this issue or have any questions? Come on up, Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Kunkel. I live at 1303 Holly Lane. I represent the owners on Holly Lane, the north front yard of Trapp. And it is true, stormwater is one of our major concerns. I came to a study session a couple weeks ago where the issue was private roads. So Holly Lane is a private road. So just as private road owners, we bear all responsibility for not just stormwater, but everything on our lane. So anything that comes closer is of natural concern to us. It sounds like this was really well thought out. I understand why it gets closer, and I don't want to say, we're okay with it. We understand that there's been, you move up a steep learning curve on this stuff. We all get that. We get it. Like, as I told the meeting a couple weeks ago, we didn't even know we moved on a private lane when we moved here. We did not know what that meant. So my issue and our issue as the owners is just making sure this fits in again with sort of the overall standards and guidelines of the village. It's not about just two homeowners or the 3 or 4 of us, but sort of what it means and how it reflects or how it will ripple, I guess, for the village. And honestly, if you guys are okay with it, we're okay with it. I mean, we don't have any major concerns. I appreciate your willingness to compromise in every way. As an environmentalist, I want to save the trees. We get that there are a lot of competing priorities here, so we appreciate your consideration of the issue and allowing all of us to contribute to it.
Sure. What's your T-shirt mean?
It means I love Cape Town. It's I love Cape Town, and I was there a year ago today.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so, sorry, thank you.
Thank you. All right, David, come on back up for a second. And I know you're not the village engineer or anything like that, but can you speak to the drainage and stormwater issues relative to this proposed improvements and what the Public Works and the engineering department had to say about the overall drainage and grading on the property?
Yes, the applicant has submitted plans, and they have to comply with all of our drainage requirements and stormwater requirements as any other impervious surface project would have to comply.
And do I remember something in the zoning board minutes about that there's still a lot of excess impervious available on the lot
Yes,
itself?
they don't meet Their maximum, correct.
I mean, are they close or,
Um, They could have almost 13,000 and they have about 10,000. They will have 10,000,
with this improvement?
yes,
There's still 3,000 feet
approximately.
under.
yes.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll just open it up for comment. John, we'll start with you, and we'll just work our way down the line here.
I get-
Can I ask Dave while he's there, one more question? Obviously, the through lots are somewhat unusual situations. Are there any other areas in the village that would be analogous to this neighborhood? Nothing leaps to mind.
Yeah, I'm fairly new,
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
still,
Right.
I'm trying to think.
I guess the reason why I'm asking is that there is a very small, with the way that the average setback is calculated, that there is a very small envelope for building. And so I'm just wondering if that is the common situation, or whether this is unusually tight.
I can't tell you, I can't
Okay.
answer that
Okay.
in terms of other other areas. Generally, if you think about it, a through lot, there's probably going to be a predominant street that's going to have the frontage.
Right, right,
And that the back is going to act as the rear yard.
right,
So generally, the houses will be in alignment.
right,
So in this case, they're along Trap.
Right.
So then the larger is going to be
right, right.
along Holly.
Exactly.
But again, it could be reversed. You could have a neighborhood where the houses are set back farther from the street, from one street and closer to the other, and have smaller backyards.
Right.
You know, Penny, what I find interesting is that with that 88-foot setback, that's 10,560 square feet of unbuildable space.
Yeah, right,
That's larger
right.
than all of our lots in R4, R5, I mean.
That's what I'm trying to get a
Quarter
handle
acre, I
on in
mean.
terms of what would be, sort of the expected kind of an envelope for this secondary structure. So, thanks. I know it was a tough question, and I just was wondering if anything leapt to mind, and if not, it speaks to the unusual nature of it, so. Can you think of anything?
No,
Yeah, I
good.
can't, no.
All right, we'll start with John,
I
and
think it's a good example of, a good use of a variance. You got a neighboring house with a pool. If you look at Holly, the back of the lot of the subject residence is really well landscaped away. You don't even see into the yard. Granted, there's no guarantee it's going to stay that way. And again, like you said, it's still 3,000 square feet under the maximum buildable area. So I really don't see a problem with it. I appreciate the petitioner working with us on anything that we come up with.
Andy?
I think it's a good plan. Yeah, I think it's a good plan. This is a classic example of unique circumstances. We have had a number of these over the years. I know on zoning, I recall some, including, I think, even one with a swimming pool. Chris, as you pointed out, if that 88 feet setback was honored, I mean, it renders most of the yard sort of unusable, or at least unbuildable. So I think it's I think it should be approved.
Ann?
So I am a neighbor on Kent, and we have a pool built by Boylini and landscaped by Rocco, and those are your contractors, and I think that it will be beautiful, and I hope that you enjoy it as much as we do.
Bob?
I get, it seems that I don't have objection to it, it's fine, but it seems that the applicant really doesn't care about that north deck. From the stormwater standpoint, for the folks on Holly, it adds a little more yard instead of concrete or whatever it is, and wouldn't be reducing the size of the pool. And if it's just a throw-in that the applicant really doesn't need or care much about, I'd say get rid of that 14 feet, and that would satisfy maybe some of the people on the zoning board who were looking for a little shorter structure, not sort of pool, but a little less encroachment toward Holly. And again, if the applicant didn't care about it, I'd have them take that out and go ahead with the proposal.
Am I missing the fact that the setback, the deck can be anywhere?
Right.
You could build a patio back there anytime you want.
As long as it's not more than 8 inches off the ground.
Right. So there's no variance at all required. because
No, I
of the
understand
deck.
that, I understand that, but the whole, I'm looking at this as the whole structure as a,
Right.
I understand technically where the pool needs to be, but I'm just saying that this, the whole thing
Right. But
is
in
going to be
theory,
36 feet from Holly.
right. But in theory, you could take that 14 feet off today. You can apply for building permit tomorrow to put a 3,000 foot patio there with no special use.
Because he's under the permeable surface.
He could put a patio bigger than that anywhere he wants on the
But I
property.
don't think he's saying he was going to do that, but.
Well, no.
Okay.
Not him, but it could happen. There's no guarantee you're not going to get that anyway.
Well, okay, they could do that after this is built too.
Right.
So I understand that.
And I don't understand the purpose of that.
I agree.
Scott?
I'm okay with it. I do, it's a unique circumstance. In terms of the 14 feet, if it's going to be if it's going to be an impermeable surface, you're going to pay for more underground storage. If it's a permeable surface, I'm okay with it. In my mind, I don't feel so strongly about that 14 feet that I feel we have to put it in the, in the requirements. If the owner wants to make that decision, that trade-off, I guess I'm fine with it.
Penny?
I would say that when you started your comments and you said that your understanding from the zoning board was relative to what they were looking for. I think they were looking for a diminishment in the amount of the variation rather than a black or white in terms of turning it sideways. As an individual who, this is a personal aside, as an individual who owns a pool in a floodplain, I would say, you do want to try and, you may want to maximize your permeable surface, because the more you have, the less you have flood water in your pool. But I personally would encourage you to think about perhaps shortening it to the 40-foot. I understand your personal reason for wanting the additional length, but relative to residential pools, I'm not sure that's a hardship. In general, I think the building envelope, by following the 88-foot setback, is so incredibly small, it just doesn't make any sense. So I would support in general the concept, but I guess I'm alone on this one. I would encourage you to think about reducing it to 20 by 40, but if I'm the only thought on that and the council, so be it. But that's my thought.
Great, thanks, Penny. So I guess you're looking for policy direction. I don't get that, but it sounds like 5 of us are generally okay with the pool as it is. One of us would like to see the pool deck go away. And Penny, what was your feeling on the pool deck?
Well, I think the bigger issue is the impermeable surface and the size of the variance. I personally, if I'd started the comments at the beginning, I would have said I would encourage you to go to a 40-foot pool, but I'm at the tail end and everybody else seems to be pretty much in favor of it, so.
Okay.
And they're they're 30% short of their impermeable max for the size of the lot.
No, I understand that, but given where they are, I just, but.
Yeah, there's a lot of acreage.
Right, it is what it is.
So,
I hate that expression, sorry.
yeah, me too. There's another one like that I hate, but we won't digress that deeply. Did you hear what you need to hear, David? I guess I don't understand why we're giving you policy direction and why we aren't acting on an actual application.
Because you didn't.
There's not a recommendation from the zoning board.
we don't prepare an ordinance until we get your direction.
Oh, okay. So did we give you direction?
Yes,
believe
we'll
we have
prepare an ordinance approving the variation.
Okay,
Thanks, David.
that works for me. And Liz, thanks for coming out, and thank you for coming out as well, and appreciate all the thought on this. Okay, now we'll back up and pick up where we left off. Item number 8, ordinances and resolutions. Item 8A, ordinance number MC 1, 2019. Commercial District Zoning Ordinance Amendments. This is up for adoption. After a year of study and discussion about commercial zoning districts, and a public hearing was heard on March 19th, and the subject ordinance was introduced. At that meeting, several revisions were requested by council. Community Development Director David Schoen will review the changes, and the council will consider adopting the zoning amendments. David, I'll let you go ahead, and I do have some questions after you finish, so.
Okay. At the last meeting, we spent some time talking about co-working spaces. It worked with Assistant Village Attorney Schuster on revising it, and we added a couple of concepts that weren't in it before, in terms of that these are individuals generally not employed by the same organization, that it is a membership form of use of space, as individuals generally come for a common purpose or for the purpose of working as individuals and sharing space. So we revised the definition as such. Also, there was discussion regarding the standard in terms of a special use having to be similar in nature to a retail use in terms of its presentation on the street, including window display, or I should say display windows, facades, signage, and lighting. Had discussion as some council members had found that recent special uses that had been approved didn't fully seem to be committed to this concept, in particular the use of display windows. We provided you information from the design review guidelines, which really focus on the exterior design of windows in the facade, which I believe what we were hearing from the council was more the concern about what is going on inside the building on the other side of the windows, and how they're being used. Some issues we often hear about is with more office use facilities, they will have blinds. And if they, during certain times of day with the sun shining in, whether it's to see their computer screen or the glare from the sun, will use those blinds. And so also in the design of some spaces, they may have a wall not too far from the display window so that you then use a very small area and then a wall. And so there's concern that these can create blank inactive storefronts which take away from the retail experience. So as staff, we try to spend some time thinking of, well, with all the potential different types of special uses and the types of spaces they could occupy, would there be a specific design standard that we could come up with? And we couldn't. I mean, we could propose you can't have blinds in your storefronts, but I don't know if we want to do that even for some retail uses. And then we felt, or we ended in the position that it should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and that with each special use, we could apply specific conditions for approval. And if the applicant failed to live up to those, we could take action, because they would not be in compliance with the zoning ordinance, which in this instance would be their special use conditions. And so we would need to take, we need to pay more attention to this issue as we consider special use applications and identify if the Plan Commission recommends approval, what in particular about that use complies with these standards, and try to articulate that in the special use ordinance. There was an additional edit, whoops. A trustee pointed out that when we were combining categories, we combined computer sales with other electronic sales, and we had missed deleting the computer equipment sales category, so we have taken care of that. And then also a trustee discussed with us the existing wording of tailor shop, dressmaking establishment, or shoe or hat repair. The intent of that was more about the repair of apparel and shoes. So we made it more clear that it's apparel or shoe repair, and that if someone had a dressmaking establishment, such as wedding dresses, and it was a retail sales establishment, we would categorize that as an apparel retail sales establishment and would allow it by right. But if it was purely, predominantly just repairing apparel or shoes, that would require a special use in the overlay district. The last issue I would note is we had a property owner in Hubbard Woods that expressed concerns about the ordinance, its effective date. They had shared with us that they'd been working with a nail salon, and that they wanted to be provided the opportunity to finalize that deal. The nail salon is going to require a building permit because of the use and its requirements, and thus then a new certificate of occupancy, which if the council would adopt it tonight, they have not applied for either at this point in time, so they would need to comply with the new requirements, which under the proposed zoning amendments, a nail salon would require special use approval. So they have requested that you make the ordinance effective 90 days from your adoption in order to give them and others an opportunity to finalize any deals they may have out there. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for David?
Is 90 days enough time?
Yeah, is that reasonable?
I would say is 90 days too much time.
That was what she requested.
Okay.
And it's up to them to act within that amount of time.
Okay, that's what they asked for, though.
Yes, that's what they asked for.
I have some thoughts on this, but I'd rather go to public comment before I share my thoughts. Would anybody from the audience like to speak on this item? Might as well stay up there, David. Doesn't look like. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to say hello.
Oh, hi.
Nice to finally meet you in person. Hi, my name is Leslie Stevens. Actually, I've been a member of this village for 58 years, so I have seen a lot through my years. We have owned the property at 950 Green Bay Road since 1957. We built the building. We've seen everything that has happened. Ordinance, overlay, you name it. The last overlay actually required our building. We had to eliminate the medical use that it was built under, and basically spent over $1 million renovating our building to put retail on the first floor. So it is a little bit concerning when we walk down and we see an orthodontic office or a pediatric office, and hearing about some of these other things, because that's what we spent all the money to basically work with the village to make sure we were in compliance with what they were initiating. So here we are now today. I'm actually the one asking for the 90 days. I had never received the notice of your ordinance meeting that was in March. And actually, as I do with any new tenant, I contact the village and let them know what's going on, where I am, what concerns I have, what do I need to tell these people, so we can make the arrangement, the partnership to work well together. And unfortunately, I left a message on Friday, traveled to Germany, received a call on Monday, or a text message from Brian, and with what this was all going on. I said, I'm in a bad situation because I've already proceeded with the contract, we've already discussed, had no knowledge of it. So that's why I'm requesting it. These people are in the process of their designs, following through with everything. So I'm hoping they get everything completed within 90 days. Obviously, that's their intent. So I'm just here to say, we've always been a good partner in the village. And sometimes I know the business owners were kind of the villains in this conversation. It's not our intent to be a villain. It's not our intent. We're obviously here, we have to make ourselves viable. And I just went down one block in Hubbard Woods, 11 vacancies. Retail is no longer here. Like, unfortunately, we're a service industry. We need services. So nail salon, whatever it might be, it's a service. I wish I could go out there and magically create these businesses to come into Winnetka. Our taxes are too high, our rents are too high. We just need to make it work. So what I'm asking tonight is, please be my partner. Help me with this situation. I don't think our family, I don't think our building has ever done anything to not be part of the community. And our intent is to remain here, to still be part of this community. So thank you. I don't know if you have any questions about what we have in store, but anyways, thank you for your time.
Is 90 days enough time?
I hope so.
David, if the nail salon moves forward, there's some sort of permits can be filed with us? A building permit? What's the next thing that happens, assuming your deal goes through?
The next step would be for the nail salon to submit a building permit for their proposed improvements.
Okay. The reason I ask is because if there's a hiccup or anything in the permitting process before I'm wondering what the 90 days, what has to, so if does the nail salon actually have to be open within 90 days? Does it have to start construction? Does it have to have a signed lease? That's what I'm trying to get to, sort of.
I mean, we can, a lot of times these provisions are written so long as there's a complete building permit application before the effective date.
Good. That's what I'd like to see. That way, if there's any hiccups or whatever in the building permit process, you're not up against the wall. I just think that would be the best.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Stevens. Before we kick off the conversation, I wanted to raise one issue. And part of it's because I'm a little raw about it, and part of it's because I'm just curious. When we last spoke about this, there was some concerns raised about our enforcement ability relative to wayward special use permits and the fact that, a lot of times we as a council make decisions and recommendations based on the promises that are proffered by the people standing at the podium as they're asking for these special use permits. And, as you all up here know, sometimes I might not speak as succinctly and as appropriately as the position demands, and the Winnetka Talk picked up on that and was kind enough to help everybody understand how upset I was about wayward uses, and because I was very upset about the fact that when we sit here and in good conscience let people go forward with special use permits, that there's an expectation that they're going to live up to their word and that they're going to be good partners. And, I was referring at the time to two uses which obtained special use permits who indicated that they were going to do certain things in their storefronts that induced us into approving them. And, my concern is that as we go through this process again and again and again, and as special use permits come up and we receive these promises, that we have something more than just, oh, it's too bad they didn't do what they said they were going to do, and that we have some ability, some clear, stipulated ability to apply the pressure necessary, or in some cases, just revoke the special use if they're obstinate about it. I will say, and I'm going to try to stay calm about this, but earlier this week I found out, as I noticed, my morning run takes me past Caldwell Banker on Lincoln every day, and so I get to view the window that we all agreed to, as part of the special use permit, would contain pop-up retail. And I was sharing that with a few people in the community, that it doesn't seem to be working, and they don't seem to be putting a lot of effort into finding vendors that'll display their wares, especially over the holidays. It was a little perplexing to me why more people wouldn't be interested in at least having a display there, right? And I come to find out that Caldwell Banker actually rents the space. And if a retailer wants to display their wares in that space, that it will cost them $250 for 1 week to display their wares in the window and actually sell. And I don't think any of us, when we approved that or voted on it, ever conceived that we would turn that particular window into a money-making proposition for a billion-dollar realty company here in Winnetka. And so with respect to enforcement, this is why it's been a critical part to me. And the one thing I'm a little, well, I'll say it, I'm a little miffed about the fact that there's nothing in this special use category that speaks anything to our enforcement powers. And I don't feel really good about letting you guys vote on this tonight until it's addressed. Because we'll forget about it, and it'll be 6 more months before it comes back again, and it'll be one more problem that'll arise somewhere along the line, and the institutional memory will be lost. I thought we were going to see something about a notice and cure provision, or something creative about how we could apply pressure to people who aren't complying with the terms of their special use. Because to simply say, and actually I had a resident send me an email this morning saying, what are we, the window police? And because, again, they didn't get the message that the whole idea was that window was supposed to be something other than what it is. And that's what we gave the approval on. So, look, if you guys want to go ahead and vote on this without that, with the knowledge that at some point we're going to have to deal with it again, that's fine. But I really felt like I had to say my piece on this, because when I heard about the $250 rent for a week, it just smoked me.
So, Chris, I mean, my understanding is we already have the authority. It's just that we have never exerted the authority. So I don't know, and Peter, maybe you can clarify, I don't know if there's anything new that can be written in here. It's more a willingness of the council to say this is a problem, we're going to call the offending party in, and we're going to act.
Yeah, I mean, in every single special use permit ordinance that we adopt, there is a provision that says that if you do not comply with the conditions of the ordinance, after we give you notice, the village has the authority to revoke it.
Okay.
So that's standard language in every special use ordinance that's adopted.
Is there the possibility for some intermediary steps or types of provisions? So, for example, I mean, just completely pull the permit is, I'm glad that we have that as a last option, but is there possible to put in fines or something else to encourage somebody to change their behavior until the permit is actually pulled? Because that's a pretty black or white option. I mean, it's nice to have that in the end, but, we want people to comply. We wouldn't have granted it if we didn't want them in there in the first place.
I mean, the ordinance, again, the standard provision does not require you, you can do anything short of revoking the special use.
So we have it within our, thank you guys for coming.
See, I told you we get to the boring part.
Until we start yelling.
Pardon my interruption. So do we need to put into the ordinance what those intermediary steps would be, or we are free to put in any penalty we would like to?
You can put in whatever, any penalty you, I don't think you need, it would be unusual, I think, to put in a special use permit ordinance, some kind of progressive discipline, if you will, provision, because you already have it. You have the right to fine somebody under the municipal code. This code right now.
Okay.
If they're not complying with the village ordinance.
So then what does that look like? How would we, where would
What is
we?
it, maximum $500 per day? $750 per day?
Yeah. It's just a matter of enforcement and us making the initial, not even, if there's no fine today, but you need to give them notice that, hey, resolve the problem.
And although we maybe don't have to put that into the ordinance, I think if we are going to move to that policy, it's important that we put that as part of the notification. But I would be in favor of that, because I think,
When you say that, what, I'm not sure, what are you saying here?
well, in terms of having a progressive, that we would then go, we would have standards with
I think we already have
the
that.
special use, well, no, special use terms, but so that somebody coming in and requesting special use, and we say these are the terms, and oh, by the way, if you do not comply with the special terms, here is, here are the penalties that will be put into place, and ultimately, your permit can be pulled, so that they're aware up front. And
Yeah, and
Well, I guess I feel better then, because.
Well, at least that
because
we know
I can
it.
just simply do this.
I think, I don't know, maybe, Penny, are you saying as a once we grant a special use permit, should we hand the business a piece of paper?
We do.
That says, if you do not.
We do.
No, but do we say, if you do not comply, after 30 days, you will get a warning, after another 30 days, you'll get a fine?
every single special use permit ordinance has as an exhibit a document called an unconditional consent that the applicant signs, agreeing to comply with the terms of the ordinance, and the ordinance has as its last section, failure to comply. And it's got this big ugly paragraph about what happens if you don't.
so it goes through the fines and all of that.
Doesn't say fines, it says, you have the right to terminate.
Right, well, no, I understand that. I mean, I think
you're
it's
just saying-
clarification for all of us in terms of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to
Yeah.
say, I guess what you are saying is maybe it's not a question of changing this ordinance in front of us
Right.
today or
I
any
understand.
other ordinance. It's just saying, maybe edit that paragraph to say, okay, we'll start, and maybe you could get a fine, or you could get,
Yeah, but I don't think you want to say, because it may be a big violation where you want to say.
Go right to.
Right, so we can add some language to make it clear that fines is one thing that could happen, but I wouldn't want to limit your discretion.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can, okay, and thank you, Peter. I didn't understand from our last conversation that each individual special use permit, which is an ordinance, that language is included. Well, then, I'm going to ask that our, that our community development director and his enforcement staff serve notice on Caldwell Banker that they're in violation of their special use permit, and that we would appreciate them to come to council as a first step to resolve the deficiency. And does anybody have a problem with that?
Not at all.
No problem with that, but, is that the only one? I mean, this is,
Well, we also have another
I know,
store
but-
that I understand is in transition, and so I think we've,
but this sounds like a general issue of
so
enforcement.
do we have to walk around being the ones to notice, I guess is the
Exactly.
question, right?
Exactly, is there follow-up on special
Or
use?
it's part of David's job and
Yeah,
his staff.
I think that's it.
Yes.
Flag,
and-
to at least bring to our attention possible issues.
Correct, and as village manager and I have been discussing in terms of we need to come up with a program to follow up on special uses in terms of their compliance with their standards, both immediately after they operate to see that they're in compliance, and then monitor it over time.
And I also had a conversation with David about what it is we're trying to accomplish through our windows. And, no, we don't want to become the window police per se relative to the standard retail uses. But that when I went and looked at the DRB guidelines relative to window and door fenestration, I love that word, fenestration, and the requirements are about the exterior with the underlying assumption that there would be retail on the inside. And talking with David about it, I don't think it makes any sense to put in the ordinance what that means, but I think it would be helpful that we do a little more thinking about it and provide a little vision for people who are coming in as applicants, so they get a sense of what we're trying to accomplish. So that when they come before us with a proposal, hopefully we'll be already thinking along the same lines, that maybe will be a little more productive. So that's work we can do outside of this, but if I can bring up a different topic, something that I had.
We'll open it up for general conversation now, so
Okay.
I'll stand down on my,
No, I completely agree with you, so I just want you to know that thank you for bringing it up. There was a different category that I had also mentioned that I'll bring to your attention. I don't know whether I was the only one who was concerned about it. It was for personal fitness facilities, which is on agenda packet, page 178, under P, section P. And currently, this suggested it would not be permitted in C1 neighborhood commercial. It would be permitted in C2 general and a special use in the commercial overlay. I was actually looking about the C1 neighborhood commercial, and I was wondering if we wanted to refine this category a little bit, because there are obviously a wide variety of personal fitness facilities, some of which are one-on-one training, which I can't imagine would be a problem as far as anybody is concerned. I'm thinking the major concern was traffic, and obviously spaces that offer classes and have a lot of people coming in and out, sort of in waves in a neighborhood, that's problematic. So I didn't know if we ought to be refining that category, or if you were comfortable with leaving it the way it was.
So, I think that category of personal fitness, it's defined by the size of the groups, the size of the.
The square footage of the area.
Okay.
Less than 2,500 square feet.
So are you talking about a new definition then, a new category that would be 500 square feet? Because if it's one-on-one training, it's not in 2,500 square feet, probably.
Yeah, so I don't know if it is a size issue, or it's, a traffic issue.
C1 is Indian Hill.
Yeah, right. I mean, there are personal fitness, there have been personal fitness uses down there. I didn't know that they were a problem. So I don't know if we want to prohibit it in a C1 district. I don't know.
So just our rationale, we had split personal fitness facilities from health clubs, which are then larger than 2,500 square feet. The council hadn't had a discussion about how to treat the C1 district, but when we were making the overall amendments, we had to address how the use should be allowed in the C1 district. Given health clubs are not allowed, we made personal fitness facilities also not allowed.
Right. So I don't know if you want to be prohibiting outright. And I had told David that I would talk to my son, who was doing some research on it, and he was not available for conversation, so he was of no use. So.
So are you suggesting that we change it from a not permitted to a special, or a permitted, Benny?
It seems like if we make it permitted in general retail, it would make sense to make it permitted neighborhood commercial. I'm not sure I might be missing something there in terms of the unique concerns between general retail and neighborhood commercial.
I mean, yeah, if we're going to change it from no to anything, I would say it's special use. Because you're starting to really refine, okay, is it one people? Is it two people? Is it five people? I mean, it's all about the traffic.
Yeah, the traffic is that.
But they're like small facilities, though.
They are, but we're still defining it as 2,500.
You know, it's interesting. I'm negotiating a lease with a new hot yoga facility. on a 1,800 square foot space.
Right, how many people are in the class?
It's hot yoga,
So it's hot, a lot of people.
40 mats,
So, so it,
40 mats.
Seems like a fire code violation.
No, and actually, they've got it all laid out, but they can get up to 40 mats in an 1,800 square foot hot yoga
Right.
studio. So,
Right.
I mean, there are some uses under 2,500 square feet
Right.
and indeed generate a lot of traffic.
So special use.
Special, yes. Good call,
is that,
Andy.
does that make sense? Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion or comments on this?
I have a question. One of the comments that the one was speaking from the public was that she wasn't notified. I thought we had notified property owners. Was that particular person on the list? How do we miss that?
Yeah, so how we do the notice is we go to the treasurer's website and we find the address that's on the tax bill and we mail it to that address.
Okay.
And one was mailed to 950 Green Bay Road.
Okay, all right, great. Just want to make sure, because that was something I asked about doing, and want to make sure we got done. Thanks. And I guess going back to the 3 months to 90 days, I wouldn't mind increasing that. You know, right now, we have someone in front of us that's got a deal going on, and you know it takes 90 days to probably finish that deal and get a building permit started. What if there's someone out there negotiating we just don't know about yet? That might be, 4 weeks away. Do we want to increase that possibly to 6 months? Just a suggestion.
I think Peter said as long as the standard is usually as long as the permit is in, right? So,
Right, I'm okay with, like, today.
right, so I
They'll
think,
probably get in, but there could be someone else out there that,
at some point, I think we have to say it starts. And I think if we give people 3 months from now to file any permits, that in a sense maybe is in their negotiating interest. They can say to the person, hey, if you want to be in Winnetka,
Right.
this is your last chance. You got 90 days. So,
is it,
yeah.
is it asking too much that when this does get passed, that we also send an ordinance to all the owners again? Is that too cumbersome, or?
And we are planning to do that.
Yeah, this way it's in their hands, and we've done our duty on letting them know that this is the ordinance.
And also through the chamber in terms of, right.
Okay, great, thanks.
Leslie?
If I could make a suggestion, I am at 950 Green Bay Road. We have 5 different businesses at 950 Green Bay Road. So when it's sent, there's no specific office. So it can be lost, not ever. I mean, I'm there on a daily basis. Unfortunately, I probably work my office 7 days a week.
Right.
So if it was there, I would have seen it. So I would, especially on something as important as this, I don't know if you send it certified, I don't know if you send emails, I don't know if you have some kind of listing, but I would just suggest, because if I hadn't made that phone call just to discuss this potential tenant, I would have never known. So, I've been doing this for a long time, so that would be my answer or my suggestion, if that could happen, just to make sure we're all aware. Okay, thank you.
Right. Any other comments? All right, let's see where this goes. Would anybody like to make a motion to adopt ordinance number MC1 2019?
And do we have to add to that the 90-day?
Yep.
That takes effect.
Once the motion's there, now we can go ahead and amend it, correct?
Someone has a second as well.
Yeah.
Is it second too? Second, we got the second.
Okay. So I'd like to.
Amendments.
I'd like to offer an amendment that the ordinance take effect 90 days from today.
And that anybody who has a completed building permit.
Yeah, and
Within that 90
the
days
standard
should
of,
be able to
yes,
proceed.
yes.
Not a completed building permit, permit applied for.
Permit application.
Correct.
The application has been applied, building application has been applied for.
Okay, we understand that?
Yep.
What's the next step then? Oh, it's a vote?
we also-
I know, once we do this
Second-
amendment.
Somebody has to second my.
I second the motion to amend.
Thanks, Andy.
Hang on, do we need an amendment for the personal fitness facility?
Oh, yes, that's right. Making it a special use in the
And I'll second that amendment.
neighborhood commercial. Anything else?
Who made the first motion to approve?
Ann made the first motion to
You
approve.
just
And
want to
John.
make your motion to adopt the ordinance, introduce it as, with those two amendments in it.
Sure, I move to introduce it and amend it and adopt it with those two amendments, in
Inter-
it, whatever you said.
Very well
Keep going,
said.
Ann.
I second whatever she said.
Okay, I have a motion, and I have something that sounds like a motion, something that kind of sounds like a second.
Now you have a second.
So now we can go ahead and vote. This is a roll call vote.
Okay. Trustee Wedner?
Yes.
Trustee Kreip?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Lampier?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Motion carries, thank you. Okay, one moment. David's all fired up.
Yeah.
He can hardly wait. All right, item B, ordinance number MC2, 2019, Plan Development Amendments. This is a continuation of the public hearing and introduction. Is that correct? Okay. So do I have to open it again?
You got it open, so. No, you just need to open the public.
Yeah, you're
Oh.
opening the public hearing.
Okay. So I'll get there in a minute. Okay, the council has discussed the procedures for plan development at 3 prior council meetings. The goal was to clarify expectations for developers while still conducting a transparent process. And just for everyone's edification, I want to bear with me. What page is that on again? Thanks. It's been a long week, folks, I'm sorry. By Thursday, I'm pretty much toast. And just to review here, the village council, excuse me, Scott, the village council had 3 sessions on 12/11/18, 2/12/19.
No, that wasn't, we didn't, that was deferred. We've only done it twice.
Scheduled council discussion was deferred, right. 3/5/19. And then the zoning board heard it on January 14th. The plan commission heard it on January 23rd. And the design review board heard it on January 24th. So it's been a total of 5 public meetings on the subject. The goal was to clarify expectations for developers while still conducting a transparent public process and thoroughly vetting the proposed development for its overall benefit to the village. Tonight, the council will hold a public hearing to gather public input on the proposed plan development amendments and then consider introducing the draft code amendment ordinance. The public hearing is now open, and we'll start out with Community Development Director David Schoen to review the item.
So on March 5th was the last time the village council discussed the issue. At that meeting, you reviewed comments that you received from the Plan Commission, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Design Review Board regarding proposed changes. And at the conclusion of that meeting, you directed us to prepare an ordinance amending the plan development regulations. So the ordinance, as you directed us, now includes a concept plan review stage where an applicant, without a fee, can come before the council with a concept to get your initial feedback before they go through the formal application process. The council also discussed creating a plan development commission, and that's been incorporated into the ordinance, and I'll summarize that in a minute. The council also discussed that in terms of the preliminary and final plan review stages, that the advisory bodies would be involved in the preliminary stage. The final plan stage, the council would just consider it. Unless the council found that the plan was not in substantial conformity, then the council could refer it back to the advisory bodies for review and recommendation. And the ordinance is structured to do that. In terms of the Plan Development Commission, as the council discussed, it will have 9 members. Initially, it'll have 5 from the Plan Commission and 4 from the ZBA. The chairs of each of those 2 bodies will automatically be members, and then the village president, with the board council's confirmation, will select the other members. There will be 2-year terms. The chairperson for the advisory body with 4 seats will be the chairperson of the Plan Development Commission, and the advisory body that has 5 seats, that person will be the vice chair. Quorum would be 5 members, and that a vote would be a majority of those present in order to form a recommendation to forward to the village council. In terms of the plan development regulations, at the last meeting, we talked about some general requirements, plan development standards, and exception standards. You asked for us to make a few revisions, and we've incorporated those into the document. You also asked us that the Plan Commission must review a preliminary application at no fewer than 2 meetings, and that's been incorporated into the ordinance. We have made the pre-application step now a requirement, given that an applicant has this ability to come before you for a concept plan. We thought it would be important that they have to meet with staff first before they just submit some sketch plan for your review and consideration. And then what we also did was we amended the submittal requirements section, hopefully taking what was there and making it more clear for an applicant to determine what they needed to submit for the plan development process. One additional thing we did was that a plan development that also required an individual special use request, that joint request would go to the Plan Development Commission. So to try to explain this as an example, this is the one Winnetka floor plan. If they could get a bowling alley to fit in there on part of it, which is a special use, that during the plan development process, they could also request for that special use permit approval, and the Plan Development Commission would consider that at the same time, rather than having the applicant also have to go before the Plan Commission, and depending upon the use and its location, also the ZBA. So then the process was established so that with the plan development, you could ask for those individual special uses. So that's an overview of the ordinance, and I'd be happy to answer any specific questions regarding what we have drafted.
Great. Before we get to council questions, in order to sustain the public hearing aspect of this, I need to call for comments or questions from the audience on this item. Would anybody from the audience like to speak on the special use permit? And Jack, you don't have to sit tight. Okay, good. Come on up.
Jack Cole at Archie on Cherry Street. If the plan development has a 2-year term of office, what will you do if one of the appointed persons is leaving in a year, for instance? Does their appointment to the Plan Development Commission continue further?
In order for somebody to be on the Plan Development Commission, they have to be on the ZBA or the Plan Commission. So if your question is if they leave the ZBA, then they would also at the same time leave the Plan Development Commission. The president would have to appoint and the council would have to approve a new member.
Thank you. Thanks.
It was easy. Any other thoughts? Couple weeks, it's all going to matter. Congratulations, by the way. As did all of we. Yeah, good stuff. Anybody else like to speak on this item? Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed and the council will deliberate. So item B is council questions first for David. Can we open that up with questions for David on the proposed ordinance?
David, I just want to say thank you. I know that you guys went through a lot of iterations on this, and we've talked about this in great detail, and appreciate the thought and the care that went into this whole thing, and like where you ended up with it. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank Peter and Ben for their help in drafting it.
A question, David. One of the things we talked about at the last meeting was, the plan developments are few and far between, right? So there will be long periods of time, there may be, multiple plan development commissions who never sit. So we'll lose, in a sense, institutional knowledge on a plan development. So training for this group is going to be key. Is training part of it? Do you put that in an ordinance, or how do we kind of, make sure that happens? I know that that's the intent.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know, Rob, if you've got any thoughts also on.
We did discuss that, though.
Yeah, we discussed that being important. The question is just, it's not anywhere in here, so.
In the absence of it being in the plan development ordinance, it would be an administrative procedure. And we'd be working with our law firm in community development to do the training prior to them taking action on any plan development application. So if that's the
So just
council's
yeah.
council direction, then
Yeah.
we'll certainly do that.
Yeah, okay. I think it is. Yeah.
I have a simple question. I shouldn't put my developer hat on while I'm sitting in this chair, but I will. Why are you requiring a 3D model for a plan development submittal? I know people love to see it and everything, but I was really surprised because they can get very expensive very quickly.
But we also say it could be a 3D electronic model.
And what do you mean by that?
A perspective drawing, so it'd be a paper drawing, electronic drawing. It wouldn't need to be a hard.
So you're not talking about a fly-through or a walk-through or
No.
anything that can be manipulated? There's a
No.
big difference between a couple elevations on a storyboard and building a physical model of a project. And while it may have been helpful for the discussions with a project like One Winnetka, the one that we saw recently from Swanson, that would be a big expense to build a model on a small 6-unit building.
Correct, and we wouldn't. And I should also point out, there is a provision that does allow the community development director to waive any of the requirements. We would work with the applicant, and they would need to demonstrate why it would need to be waived, or may not need a full-blown traffic and parking study, but we do want a basic traffic flow study. So the ordinance does provide flexibility in terms of the submittal requirement.
And if I can add, the term 3D model isn't like 3D printing model these days. Everything we do is really 3D when you draw it anyway.
Right.
So maybe it should just be changed to 3D rendering, so you can see the intricacies of the
So
facade in and out.
for those of us lay people, which of the exhibits with One Winnetka would illustrate that type of a rendering?
The view looking at the corner, with the round
It's-
corner.
Then it's just a 3D,
rendering, right.
it's just a 3D picture, image, right, okay. Not a maquette or the whole.
No.
Right.
And very simple, maybe I just don't know my law. With 9 members of that board, you only have a quorum of 5. Is that how that always works? Majority. Okay. All right. And then I think we talked about it last time, that if you've got your board set up as the planning and the zoning people, as long as they're still on the board of their respective boards, if they get to a point where their term expired on the Plan Development Board, but the project isn't finished, could they still continue to finish that project?
Yeah, I mean, it says that they continue until their successors have been appointed. So the village president could always, or the council could decide,
Oh, change them all, okay, great.
change them all or not change.
Can we change the quorum
Yes. Yeah, I
requirements?
should have said that. You can decide what the quorum is.
Yeah, it just seems,
5 is pretty low,
right, right.
you know? I mean, 5 seems like a,
For what could be a large
yeah.
project and involvement for the community. I mean, I don't see a problem with, obviously you want an odd number, right?
Right.
So it would be 7 would be the next.
I just want to remind you that not all the time does a body have a full complement of members. And so that does then, once you start increasing that number, does create a challenge in being able to hold a meeting if you've increased the quorum.
Tough beans.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, 'cause otherwise-
Given the impact of these projects.
Yes.
Right.
No, I
Okay,
mean,
I'm just-
no, we're not going to
Yeah,
put
you're
it in
right.
the hands of
Right.
very few. And
Well, it just,
I don't think that was ever the intent, was to shortchange it. And, you know, if they're on that commission, there's certainly, I mean, as long as if this ever passes and I'm putting people on, I'm going to make sure that I'm selecting those that I have the highest confidence, have the experience and the commitment to show up when they're expected to. Yes, there's summer vacations and things of that nature.
And it's also not going to be an every month thing.
Right.
Most likely. So it shouldn't be a huge commitment.
But I think 5 is too low of a number. Personally, I do. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but
No, I would agree with that.
Andy, Ann, you got any thoughts?
7's good.
Bob? I heard nothing, but I saw a hand go out, so. Penny? 7's better than 5, I think is better.
I think you know where I will come on this one. I am not comfortable with such a small number. I personally would prefer that we have a larger commission composition, because I think that issues of this magnitude should have more input and more possibility for people to be thinking about it and opining on it. So
14
I
to
don't
5.
think that 5 is sufficient, and I certainly don't think a majority of 3 to pass something would definitely represent our community, so.
To eliminate the not having a quorum, could there be a setup that you've got members and you've got alternate members? Or is that just really getting crazy? Okay,
I think, yeah, you get a training problem too.
yeah,
there.
okay, all right, thanks.
Questions for David?
I have no questions.
Okay,
Just
now
got
we'll
put it
open
all
it up
together.
for just general discussion on the ordinance. Now, Penny, I know you have some passion on this subject, and I would invite you to lead things off.
Right, as I yelled at Chris today, Chris, that's not what I'm saying. I sent you all a memo today, and where I'm coming from, and this memo has nothing to do with the content of what the ordinance is, but rather the final, our final presentation to the community. And I know that we have talked about it already in 2 meetings, and certainly staff has done a tremendous amount of work on it. So what we have tonight represents a summary of what we have done, but I think through the New Trier Partners process and the Wamoneka process, that the plan development ordinance and process has proven to be of great interest to our community. And I think that the potential for this ordinance having a long-term impact on the community is profound. So I suggested that we continue this hearing and that we create a sort of a concise summary analysis of all the work that has been done, that we can take out to the community, that we can publicize through our, our online newsletters and through the press, and inviting the community to come, anybody who is interested in discussing the concept with us, if they have input from their own experience that they, thoughts they might have, so that a public hearing, if anybody is interested in commenting, would have the opportunity to do so. We have certainly followed our standard methods of publicizing this in terms of notice and all that, so there certainly has nothing wrong been done, but I would just like to propose that we take the extra step, just because I think that the potential for people to be very interested and perhaps feeling disappointed they didn't know about it and didn't have a chance to come out. Nobody may be interested, in which case it was a nice exercise, and I think we can feel proud about what we did. So I'm just putting that out for your consideration. It may be just my concern, but I would like to bring it up for you all to think about.
Sure. I'll go ahead and take a straw poll on that, Penny, after we talk a little bit more, too, okay? Okay.
If I
Do
can,
you want to talk about that specifically, or?
No, not yet.
Yeah, okay.
if I can just put my 2 cents in, the process we're trying to do is not reducing the village review of a PED amendment. I think we're trying to make it more cohesive and easier for the residents to track. Instead of having to go to keep track of meetings and what meetings do I go to.
No, that
Fine
doesn't,
meeting.
I just want to clarify, that has nothing to do with what I'm just saying is that I think that this ordinance in general might be of great interest to the community, and I just want to make sure that people have had a chance to understand and to see that we've considered it and how we've considered it and how we came up with the suggested results, because this is significantly different than the current process that we have, and I want everybody to feel confident in the process that we used.
Yeah.
So, as I said, the agenda report that we have tonight is really useful for us, but for somebody who hasn't followed the process, looking at it, it really wouldn't tell them much about how we arrived at this decision. So I'm just talking about bringing this forward, being sure the community understands what we're proposing and how we got there. And again, providing the opportunity for a hearing for people to make comments, so they feel like they've had a chance.
And on second thought, why don't we just open the whole thing up for discussion?
Oh, sorry. I
No, that's fine. I mean, we might as well. I mean,
Yeah.
trying to hold back when we're on a flow doesn't make any sense either. so
And-
Go for it.
And the PD process, typically your typical Winnetka resident isn't going through the PD process. They're going to meetings about a PD. Typically, it's going to be someone probably out of the village that is a contract purchaser on the property that's going through these regulations. So that's just,
Except for the last two we've had.
Well,
right, but they happen to be
Both
developed.
applicants
residents
on that
would be
property
Right.
have been Winnetka residents, so.
Agreed. But, and obviously through all the public hearings we've had, we don't have a full room here tonight either, so.
Can I just jump in and say something? So, it isn't a full room tonight, and we sit up here without having an audience, feeling like nobody's watching.
But we like you guys.
We're glad that somebody's here. But I don't know about other trustees' experience, but I do get phone calls from residents about different issues that come up. I got several phone calls last week about what happened during our session. People watch this. I think that we credit our residents in our village by thinking that they haven't tuned into this process and they don't know about it. I think that's an assumption that's incorrect. I think that people do know about it. Many have expressed to me their support for it. But I think we're not in a vacuum, even though it feels like it is. And if anyone's watching, come and sit here in person. We'd like to see your face. But I do think that our residents are really involved and really know what's going on.
I think, Penny brings up a good point that, we need to make sure that we are giving the residents an opportunity to be heard. I think on the other hand, we've been elected as a representative of the community, and we've been elected with the mindset that many of us, most of us, have sat on lower boards and have an expertise that many residents don't have, right? And I think that, they want to know when something is important, but I think they are looking to us and trusting us to kind of represent them, when they're not here. And I think when you get into things like, how many people from zoning, how many people from planning, how many commissions, I think that's minutia that many of the residents, the vast majority, I don't think they'd care about. They want to know that I'm going to have an opportunity to be heard. I'm going to have an opportunity that my opinions are going to be able to be, Peter.
I'm sorry. I was advising the village president.
And I know he needs a lot of advice. I know. I have very few opportunities for my words to be heard any longer.
Sorry, sir.
And now I lost my train of thought. But no, I think my point is that with our expertise on this point, I think we have to assess, are we establishing a process that based on our experiences, and I've sat through both Nutra Partners and One Winnetka, are we giving residents, that opportunity? And I think that we are. I think that, I can look at any resident and say, you will have ample opportunity to have your voice heard as many times as you want. But also, I think we eliminate, much of the redundancy and much of the burden. I mean, I think the folks from 711 Oak have been here more times than I have, coming out multiple meetings, because that's the process. So, I think that your point is right. We have to make sure that we are not just, as we've seen just this week, jamming something through into the community or trying to jam something through on the community. But I think in this situation, we have the expertise, we have the insight, we have the experience, the personal experiences to be able to say, yeah, we can represent the village.
I want to throw a little wrinkle in, because as we were so rudely talking while you were, Scott, and I do apologize. Peter was informing me that an option that is open to us that might be a worthwhile compromise and could potentially work is we can just keep the public hearing open.
Yeah, that was what I was proposing.
Introduce this evening, and then the public hearing would continue at the adoption at the following meeting when we adopt it. So we would then have the opportunity for more public comment. We would continue that process on the public side. So if there were people that were willing to come out, and that would be what, the 16th. So, Andy, you'd have a full plate that night.
Awesome. I'm sure we'll be able to fit everybody in there.
Yeah.
But that's another option open to us, instead of just tabling the thing and bringing it back up and trying to move it forward. I will say one thing that, and all due respect to you, Jack, Scott's been in the throes of this conversation since the original downtown master plan exercise, as has Andy. And, it's one of those things I would like him to see through one way or another. No offense is taken there, but I mean, it's an important issue to Scott and something he's worked really hard on and has promoted, because it came out of all of the previous conversations we had on the downtown master plan and the subsequent task forces. So I would really like to have him included in any final decision on this particular item as well. So that's open to us as well. And with that said, I am now reopening the public hearing. Right? Can I do that?
You just did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
He closed it, now reopened.
all this power. So now we'll let Bob go ahead and say his.
I have two thoughts, and I'll rehash basically what I've said before. I think that what we're doing here is we are removing input from people we have entrusted on these various commissions. I think in talking to developers, business associates, friends, et cetera, I mentioned this to Chris earlier, the developers I've spoken to fully expect to run the gauntlet when they have a project like this, like we're talking about in towns like ours. They would appreciate having an understanding of the process, remove the duplication, et cetera, but they expect to have multiple meetings. And again, I feel like there's this feeling out there that the process was broken because of what happened across the street here. And, you know, I think that's just an assumption that may not have roots. I don't know if the process was broken. So, and I feel like this whole thing is, as opposed to when we talk about, you know, people talk about bringing light into the process, I think we're taking light away from this process by limiting it to 9 members. And then I see, and so that's, I personally disagree with this sort of shrinkage within the process to the Plan Development Commission. But then, if that passes, I have some problems with the composition and so on, and when I see that the 9 members, 2-year terms, no restriction on the reappointment of a member to 1 or more successive terms, the village president shall attempt to reduce the amount of turnover on the Plan Development Commission in order to assure that the commission is able to continue to function without loss of expertise. These people on the Plan Commission and zoning, we put them on there because of expertise, and now we're saying, well, we'll just keep reappointing the same people on this commission. Let's shrink the light even further. This does just not feel right to me at all. I'm all for bringing clarity to the process so developers understand what the different commissions are responsible for and making sure the commissions understand in their review of plan development what they're responsible for. But to have people on plan commission or zoning that have been appointed there and now they're on the outside looking in at the most important projects of this town, I think that feels real bad to me. So that's my opinion.
Can I just throw another observation in? So that's an interesting perspective. When I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the perspective of being a resident and looking at the plan that's happening. And just going through the few meetings that I went through, or the several meetings that even I had to go through being new on the council for One Winnetka, it was like meeting fatigue for residents. And so the people that ended up showing up in the end were sort of the same people. You could never get people that weren't interested parties that may have been, I don't know how to express this, but may have been less vitally interested in it, but also had sort of a general interest because there were so many meetings. And so you just had people kind of fall off, and then you had like a core of 4 people show up because they were the stalwarts. They were the most interested. So from my perspective, consolidating the meetings and making sure that they're well publicized gives an opportunity for people in the village only to have to show up fewer times, right? They don't have to go make their case for or against, 8 different times in front of all these different bodies. And I think that's important because I think, we have various stages of review and like this, I think there was a complaint on the One Winnetka where there was a preliminary plan and objections were filed, but then they weren't filed again for the final plan. And that meant that they were invalidated because, you had to redo it kind of thing. So there's so much redoing of input in our current process for residents. So that this, to me, streamlined it, made it easier for residents to get their input. And if they cared about it, then they would show up and know that they had to show up fewer times and they could really make an impression.
But the assumption you're making there is that that process could not have been made better. You're saying eliminate the input of these full commissions because of what happened here. And maybe we didn't have a good enough process with the commissions, understanding what they're responsible for, that created confusion when they went from planning to zoning, et cetera. And I think we're taking a sledgehammer to
fatigue and residents of showing up at meetings.
But
when you have a big project.
But again,
that's all.
We're saying that project across the street, which is something that none of us have ever gone through before. I mean, I'm going to say it was one project, Nutria Partners, One Winnetka. That what we had was broken because of some of the challenges we had with that building over there. And I don't think that is a correct underpinning for this, that the process, it can be made better, but to take people who have a lot of expertise and to say that you could be on the zoning board for how many years, I don't know how many terms that would be, and you would never be on the Plan Development Commission, or you can be on the Plan Commission and you'll never have an input on the post office project. It's only going to be the people that we want to keep successively reappointing. That's a problem.
Bob, I take large exception to the
Chris, you're not-
insinuation that.
you're not the
that
president
anybody
for
sitting-
life.
That anybody sitting in this seat would manipulate that commission so that they somehow controlled the conversation and maintained the secrecy and the diminishment of public comment. I really take exception to that.
You can take
because-
exception, but these are
I'm
the
sorry.
words. These are
I'm
the
sorry,
words.
Bob.
Chris, these are the words.
It-
Look at what it says.
I think
The
it's an
village
appropriate
president
assignment
shall
of the
attempt
of the
to
powers.
reduce the amount of the turnover. Those are the words that have been put into this.
And I think what Bob is trying to say is this is not a personal issue, it's that we're creating an ordinance that would apply to anybody, no matter who is sitting in the seat. And we need to do all that we can to ensure that we're setting up the ordinance in such a way that we protect the process. So, Chris, please don't take it personally,
It's
because
not
it has
personal at all,
nothing
Chris.
at all. It's in terms of looking at it objectively. And I
I think
think
it's
that
very
that's how we need to
subjective,
think
because
about it.
I didn't read it that way at all.
No, I know, I know, that's not the point. The point is that that's why we are all looking at this, to say, okay, depending on how many different ways can you look at it and how can it be interpreted to be sure that we are creating the strongest and best ordinance.
I
So-
understand that, but to insinuate that this ordinance was crafted
No.
to somehow diminish and control the
I do
process.
not I didn't think that any- insinuate
really-
that.
Is really
That's
upsetting
not
to
what
me.
Bob.
No, I think.
That's what I heard.
What we're hearing from people who commented was, what about the continuity of people who are in a process? And so if one WNEC has started and you had 4 personnel changes on the review committees, that would be interruptive of the process.
Right.
And so I think what this states basically is that if you have something going through, you will be able to provide for continuity. I think that's what Jack stood up and asked about, was can you have continuity and carryover? I think that's what the meaning of that piece in
Right.
that
Correct.
paragraph is supposed to fix.
So the
And I-
question is-
I think, not everyone's going to get to do a plan development because we have how many of them? Not a lot.
None.
Right.
Right,
So,
all I'm
you know,
saying is
it
this,
is what it is.
perhaps, well.
It would be an extreme disservice to the community to have anything but what's in there on that point. You wouldn't want to have turnover in the midst
No,
of
no,
the
no,
trend.
no.
That is actually the exact opposite of
Andy.
having a good process. So,
Andy.
no,
so-
Penny, I haven't talked at all.
Okay, no,
I'm
no,
going
okay,
to finish.
I'm sorry.
Let him talk,
I'm sorry,
please.
sorry.
So I appreciate, Bob and Penny, I appreciate both your perspectives, and I'm not going to debate, because we've done that, and I think we disagree, and that's okay. I mean, it really, Penny, I think you'd like to see a longer process. I think this process has been very well informed by people who have been,
No, I just want a clarification, which process? No, I just want to know, are you talking about our process here or the plan development? I just want a
Please
clarification. I'm
let
sorry.
Andy talk.
So I think, I understand, just putting aside the substance of these changes, Penny, you sent around a memo that says you would like to see all of these things. I think our decision is very well informed. We may not agree on that, that's okay. Right. I mean, the United States Constitution was drafted in less time than this ordinance. It was. The Gettysburg Address was done in a day, the Declaration of Independence was done in like a couple weeks. So, this is a plan development ordinance. It's not exactly a doorbuster for our residents. It hasn't been. They do entrust us to, as Scott was saying, use our expertise, our experience to make best judgments. Now, Bob, to your point, here's what I would say. I don't think the process was broken. And to the extent you have the impression that I or anyone else thinks, I don't think it was broken. I think it could be better. And I think the real crux of it for me, and it kind of gets to this discussion about the shrinkage issue, which is, can we make the process better? And the real challenge was that we had a plan commission and a zoning body that were essentially trying to do the same thing with very confusing standards. When we should really be using the people that have the expertise, the knowledge, the experience, the village input to work towards the overall goal of saying, is the development in front of us appropriate for the village, taking into account everything. That's the global big picture that we're trying to get a sense of. I spent a lot of time trying to do exactly what you were saying. I think others did as well. I think that's why other communities have used the same model, which is when you get into it, you realize there's not really a logical delineation between planning and zoning on this issue. There is a very logical delineation when it comes to the design review board, which is why we maintain that. And I agreed with you completely on that point that, that's an area where you want the separate input. If I thought there was a logical reason that these two boards were bringing something unique or different that was helpful, I would have jumped on that, but I honestly, I don't think it's there. Instead, what we have created is a process that can be improved by consolidating, and that's frankly all this is doing. And I don't remember the numbers on plan versus zoning, but ultimately we're talking about a 9-member advisory board replacing, 15 very confused people. I would rather have 9 well-directed people than 15 people applying muddy standards that don't make a lot of sense. So, I think the improvements are good. Do I think this is a perfect process? No, I don't. I would have gone further in the opposite direction from you, but that's the nature of compromise and having these discussions. And that's okay. And, one thing that I think, just kind of as an overall thing, and it's the last thing I'll say about all this, I think there is a tendency to strive for perfect policy making. Let's see what the future holds. Let's run down every possibility, and then let's wire the perfect thing. I think that's not the right way to approach this stuff. I think this has to be more like software development, right? Where we put out something that we think is viable, and I think that's what we had before. I think we had a system that worked, right? It's like a version 1.0. This is version 2.0. Is version 2.0 great? When we get to version 4.0, we're going to say this was terrible. I think what we ought to be doing, instead of kind of digging in and saying, let's spend 6 more months debating this thing and disagreeing with each other, is say, you know what? This may not be perfect, but this makes sense to at least the majority of us for now. And look, if this turns out to be wacky or has some unintended results, let's fix that. I mean, that's what elections are about. I mean, there's nothing that stops us a year from now or 2 years from now revisiting this constantly. That's what we should be doing. So I guess what I'm saying is, to the extent we do disagree, if history proves you right and me wrong, I'll be the first one to say, then let's change the damn thing. And I think it's that easy. We just have to be willing to actually try things.
Can I just add one point I want to enhance on what you said, Andy? Because having gone, during New Tree Partners, I sat both on zoning and planning. And for part of One Winnetka, I was on zoning and planning right before I came on the council. And, we say, well, let's just clarify the standards. The conversation in these plan developments are fundamentally about what's right for the community. And when you get into those conversations, sitting on zoning, you don't want to just say, well, I want to talk about height. Well, it's height in the context of the overall development. So by saying, well, let's have very defined standards and keep it in these boxes, we're almost doing a disservice, because it is the interplay of these various standards that we want the insight from this board on. And what happened on these boards was the conversation devolved to crossing the boundaries, right? Because that was just the general demand of the situation. Oh, we want to have this plan development, but we don't like the height. Well, I can't talk about height because that's zoning's issue. Well, no, we're going to talk about height, right? So you had on the bodies not only standards that were unclear on the planning side, but I think even if they were clear, as in the case of zoning, where they are very clear, here are 6 standards, boom, 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 boom. The clarity did not inhibit broader conversation. So it's not just a question of we need clearer standards. In these plan developments, the interplay across the areas of expertise is what we want. And the best way to get that, I think, is to bring the two bodies together and allow that interplay and to provide clearer standards within that context.
I first of all, Andy, I want to clarify. I think there's a misunderstanding about what my proposal was. My proposal was just to create a document that would be for the meeting on the 16th of April. So I wasn't discussing a longer process, so I just wanted to clarify. I have no interest in dragging this out either, so just so we're clear, that was what I was trying to clarify. So I'm sorry for having jumped in inappropriately. Thanks.
Something that might clarify the creation of the board with the continuity. What is the language to appoint the members of the zoning board now? Very similar to that?
It's the same. I mean,
Okay, so maybe no one knew that, right? It's the same as the current board for zoning and planning. So we got the same
I
language.
bring the names up here just like I will tonight, and you guys vote on them.
Yeah, I understood that's probably how it was. Thanks.
So I would like to just make a couple comments too. And, you know, Bob and I spoke this afternoon on this, and one thing that, you know, I was on village council when the New Trier Partners project came through, and I actually worked with Ed Woodbury in negotiating the development agreement on the first deal as well. And one thing I have recognized about our community and about the way we go about doing business with a lot of commercial enterprises, and we were just talking about the business community a little while ago, is this perception that Winnetka is a very, very difficult place to do business, and some people wear it like a badge, and some people are really embarrassed by it. And the one thing that I noted with Bob is that if you look around the communities, and let's move it to the conversation of developers as a potential business operation here in the community. And if you look at the development from a qualitative standpoint, so there's going to be some difference of opinion, but if you go to Lake Bluff, if you go to Lake Forest, if you go to Glencoe, if you go to Wilmette, and you look at the results that they're getting from their planning and zoning process on their residential properties, and you compare it to the results that we've been getting on our residential process, it's markedly different. And the point I made to Bob is because of the difficulty of understanding and working through our various approval processes, that we end up only entertaining those that are willing to endure. And the problem is usually the guys that are willing to endure and wait it out are guys like David Trandell. Because the reality of it is, any self-respecting developer who understands the value of his resources and where he deploys them to get the best return, when you look at that in the context of what people from the outside looking in see here at Winnetka, there's a perception that it's a difficult place to do business. Whether it's true or not is another question. The whole idea behind this exercise was to try to find a process that made our plan development process more accessible, more efficient, and more understandable. And it was to make it, hopefully, bring it into line with what the development community experiences in other places. It's not to say that we lighten the standards or we start hiding things in the dark rather than shining lights on them, or restricting conversation in a public forum. Just the opposite. It's meant to raise it up so that we're talking about the issues that matter, and we don't have this mindless line of people who don't even understand what the decision factors are, coming up to the podium, spouting everything under the sun. And certainly some of these things are going to include some emotion. But the reality of it is it's our responsibility to create an environment and to create a forum where we can have intelligent, goal-directed conversations. And sometimes the goal-directed is, sorry, that's not going to fit here, and sometimes it's a great project if you do this, this, and this. But that was the whole exercise here. The exercise wasn't to diminish public involvement. If anything, we've said it time and time again. The idea behind this thing is to bring the public into the conversation in a way, just like when we moved the public comment to the beginning of the meeting, to make it easy and accessible so people can play, rather than sitting there in these horribly uncomfortable, see you guys, horribly uncomfortable benches for 3-4 hours at a time before they have their chance to get their 3 minutes at the microphone. So, I'm sorry that there's some perception that this is some sort of manipulation of the process, because I don't think that was what was
Chris,
ever
please,
said.
that's not.
I will now take exception to that.
So,
That's not right.
but Bob, and that's what I heard, and I'm sorry, but the point, I'm trying to just clarify that was never my intention, bringing this conversation to the council initially. And to Penny's point, that, this has nothing to do with One Winnetka, or it has nothing to do with New Trier Partners, because the reality of it is this discussion started in 2013, when the ULI came in and identified our zoning and planning process is something that needed to be focused on and paid attention to. It was later picked up in the DMP from 2014 and
Certainly, of
2015.
course.
Now, wait a minute. But the point is that New Trier Partners was in and out of this chambers in a year.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Right.
the process was expedient, and it was okay. Same thing. Different leadership, different applicant, different project.
Chris?
So this isn't a knee-jerk reaction, Penny, please.
Okay.
This isn't a knee-jerk reaction to that particular piece of property. It's bringing ourselves somewhat into conformance with the marketplace, so we become a place where people perceive that they actually have an opportunity to do business. And that was the whole intent of this. Whether this ordinance actually achieves that or not, may be one of personal opinion. But it certainly has never been intended to diminish or limit involvement at any level. So I think we've talked quite a bit about this. And Penny, to your, deferring to your request, we will leave the public hearing open, and we will leave it open to the next time this comes up, on the 16th, when Andy is there. You got a couple weeks to get out and bang the drums and work with Kathy on getting the notice out and sending out an e-blast or whatever else you want to. But I think that's where we're going to have to bring it to a close, because I want to make sure that Scott has a chance to see, that we have, that's part of it too.
No, I agree with you.
Not rush it because Scott's leaving, but.
Chris, no.
It's a respect issue.
You are misunderstanding. My request, as I said, was just so that for our next meeting on the 16th, and I agree, Scott, we do want to get closure. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm also not saying that this is a knee-jerk. It is not. It absolutely is not. It's part of our natural policy progression. I think the work that's been done is excellent. I think I may or may not agree. That's not the point. The point is that I want to make sure that the public agrees that we've done good work and can see that. So this is relative to how we communicate with the public. It is not specific to this particular issue right here. I think we need to apply this across the board with our work. It's part of our ongoing, it just became apparent to me as I was looking and thinking about this. So I apologize if it seems personal in any way. It certainly isn't. So, okay, this is really has to do with how we conduct our work.
So since I'm being used as the motivation for getting stuff done here, we're going to jam a lot of stuff through in the next month.
Can we call the question before Scott runs
Yeah,
out
so
the
what
door?
I'd like to do is call, I'd like to call the question here.
We got two people calling the question.
And I take, I think that this is it's a good process, right? I think it is, as Andy said, it's a process that we can continue to tweak. But I do think that it's something that maybe it started working on before New Trier Partners and One Winnetka, but having sat through that, it just makes it hard, I think, on the boards to try and make rational decisions. So,
Right. Well, I've had two requests to call the
so I'm
question,
gonna
so I will do
move
that
we-
now.
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, may I have a motion to introduce ordinance number MC 2, 2019, and I guess I don't have to ask for permission, but to also continue the public hearing until the next time this matter is heard, which is on April 16th.
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in
Discussion
favor?
first? You want to change the quorum number in the ordinance?
It'll come back in the introduction.
Okay, great, thanks.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we move on. Item C, resolution number R 32, 2019, approving an IGA
I'd like to
with the
continue
village.
this to the next meeting.
Better hope your house never catches fire.
Approving an IGA with the Village of Glencoe for fire inspection services, and this is up for adoption. The Village of Glencoe has requested that the Winnetka Fire Department perform their annual fire inspections. The village is already has an agreement in place to provide the service to Northfield, and the Glencoe agreement is modeled on this existing contract. Haven't seen him for a while, but here he is to review this, is our chief, Alan Burkowski.
Well, good evening. Well, the good news is I think this is pretty straightforward and kind of a good situation. The Village of Glencoe approached us for the fire prevention inspections, and in 2014, we were approached by the Village of Northfield for the same thing. We signed an IGA with them in 2014, and for the last 5 years, we've been performing those inspections for the Village of Northfield, and it's gone really well. So when Glencoe approached us, we looked at their activity. Their activity was pretty much the same. What we are generating is about $48,000 in revenue. Our budget's about $67,000 for the Bureau. So revenue-wise, it's a good thing. The best part about it, though, for us is that prior to these IGAs, the Bureau was pretty empty on a regular basis. So with these IGAs now, we have people in the Bureau, 1 or 2 inspectors every day. So it's an improvement for our customer service and our, the architects, the designers that come to see us. And I think we can handle it, and I think it's a good thing for the village. So, as the president said, they approved it March 21st, so they're just waiting for us to approve it. They're really anxious to get going. So with that, I would entertain questions, but we are recommending approval of this IGA with the Village of Glencoe.
Any questions for Chief Burkowski?
I'm just going to jump in. I am so pleased that you guys are doing this sort of from the grassroots up, and it is really a demonstration of the efficiency and effectiveness that you can bring to village governance, and thank you.
So we have all 3 communities around us now, so the only thing left is Michigan City, so we'll
We're going to need a boat.
I like the way you're thinking, though.
I'm just waiting for the drone.
Fishing equipment.
I want to.
Cigarette boats.
Any other questions for Chief? How about from the public? Anybody have any comments on this issue? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back up. Any comments, questions, or
Thank
other
you.
thoughts on this item? All right, may I have a motion to adopt resolution number R 32, 2019?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn. Trustee Myers.
Yes.
Trustee Lampier. Trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Trustee Kripe.
Yes.
Trustee Wedner.
Yes.
Motion carries. Okay, I'm missing something here. Oh, here it is. Appointments. I have an appointment to appoint a Lynn Haley to a full term on the Zoning Board of Appeals. You've all been forwarded her resume and her application, and I'm asking your approval.
Who does she replace, Chris?
Help me out
Was
here.
it Nauman?
Mark Nauman. And I still need one replacement to fill the vacancy left by elevating Matt to the chair. So I'm hopefully going to have that one. Maybe it'll be, I'll have it by the 16th for you, Andy.
So, Chris, how did she come to our attention?
Well, she came to my attention.
That's, okay.
I had been talking with Matt the chair, Matt Bradley,
He's
and
very well, I mean, looks like great
Yeah, it was awesome.
qualifications. I just wonder, how
And-
does somebody like that all of a sudden drop out of the air?
and I will admit that I have a predisposition to people that are legal-minded for the zoning board.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, other than Andy, they seem to play out.
Sometimes it works.
and I met with Lynn, spent probably a good 90 minutes having coffee with her, and found her just fascinating from her perspective. She's got awesome background,
Yeah.
and I think she'll be a really solid addition to the team, so I'd like to get her on if at all possible. So
Yeah.
can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Closed session, we don't have any tonight, thank goodness. And 13th, adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned, thank you.